Oh man, I can't. I'm gonna go back and say all that stuff again.
Okay, yeah.
For some reason it didn't click, and I just noticed that.
Oh,
So
okay.
what I'd like to do is
Th-
start off with you again. I'll go back and try to I will recreate that piece. I thought it sounded pretty good, so I'm just going to say that again.
yeah, yeah.
I don't want to waste your time on that, but I'll add that in, and I won't include this section.
Yeah.
So let me start with a warm introduction once again. Good morning, everybody. This is Ken and Jens on December 10th, 2021, and we're starting session number 2 today. And I wish you could have been there for the brilliant exposition of the readings that I just gave, but I had forgotten to push the button. So you can make things foolproof, but you cannot make them monkey proof, which is an important thing to remember going forward. And so we'll uh, we're going to proceed with the knowledge that everything is warm and friendly here in Kansas, and that I'm thoroughly enjoying the preparation for this session today. Um, Jens and I started with an exchange of pleasantries and a reconnection to our shared lived experience, because, as I recall from the readings, that is an essential element of the relationship between the Protreptic guide and the subject of the Protreptic session. That the guide makes a commitment to understanding and empathizing with the subject, um, is empathetic, not sympathetic, and is committed to um, helping the subject explore that inner space at the level of values and not caught up in too many details of the daily lived experience. So we want to elevate the discussion to the level of values, and and that's where I think we're going to head today. We're carrying over from last week's. We surfaced two values: duty and identity, that I have been suffering through reflective thinking about that and what it means to me. And Jens is not going to let me hide in the details. I think he's going to drag me to the altitude as a mountain climber, where the air is thin but the vision is unclouded. So I want to welcome you this morning, my good friend, and I can't wait to get going. So good to see you.
Thank, thank you, Ken, and it's always good to see you. I'm here in Copenhagen, and it's actually snowing a bit and cold outside. Um, Actually, before we had this session, I was writing um, on a book, on a script where I actually use the protreptic approach to explore concepts. So it's both a way of coaching, but it's also an excellent way if you want to brainstorm if you are writing papers or something. But
Yeah.
today we will get into the, I don't know what you say, but the real juice.
Yeah.
I will share some, I think, some principles, some tools about how to approach a protreptic conversation. First of all, I just want to remind you that why use protreptic coaching? It's it's a way to separate the important stuff from the less important stuff. It's a way to act more from values than from feelings and trends. It's a way to balance your own values with the values of the organization. It's a way to get life to all the buzzwords
mm,
that we use in organization and companies. Um, uh, some of the main, as Ken also were talking about, and as we shared in the first session, is that the protreptic coaching is where we explore a concept which is important for you, and it can be a value from the organization. It can be also a value or concept from your own life, which you think is important. I can almost say both for your well-being, but it can also be for your work as a leader. And it is very important um, that we have this idea that we are exploring something between us. So it's not about you as a person, it's about a concept between us. And
mm,
we had this picture last time where we have this image of an iceberg. Very
mm,
often when we're talking about important values concepts, we are only at the surface, where the protreptic coaching is to go underneath the water and explore the whole
mm,
concepts. Um, and and a way we can do that is that we can. It's always about taking the other person, I don't know, at his word or something. We don't have any thoughts about if the other person are not saying everything. We just work with what is somehow. In different coaches' approaches, we have this idea that the person are not saying the truth, the real story or something. But here it's what comes up, which is the truth somehow. That is what we're going to work with. Um,
that really struck me in the readings. That ethical stance seems really foundational to me,
yeah.
because unlike other coaching models where there is a well-known established way to be in the world, when I coach soccer or martial arts or military officers, there is a very clear set of skills, habits, and attitudes that must be adopted to be successful in the narrow, well defined game that they are playing or the world they live in. So I can install correct thinking. This is the opposite of that. This is not judging them for fault or correctness, but as you say, meet them where they are with the things that are on the table that are mutually agreed on, and working just with that to see how those concepts fit or line up or overlap or disconnect, and exploring the different ways these pieces at the concept level,
Mm,
not
mm,
not anchored in too much of the personal detail, but pulling it up out of that to work at the principles. And I think the origin of the protreptic as a way to teach the philosopher kings is why that came about, because no one could give accountability to those kings. There was no
mm.
checks and balances that would regulate their behavior. And so it was essential for the philosopher kings to be able to separate themselves from the mundane and to look at the implications at the conceptual level with the trusted guide in order to be able to make the decisions that only the philosopher king could say. The common experience was not something that could inform that understanding. Only the philosopher king working with their world and their concepts. And so to explore those in a safe, challenging, and new way allows you to be prepared for the world. Otherwise, you get locked into those things that happened before and the way people responded to it. And you don't necessarily want unfiltered democracy, if I can say it that way, or today, the unfiltered random media to drive fundamental choices about our world. You need these. You need the quiet laboratory of the mind with a guide to get a full view of these things. So
Mm.
that really resonated with me in the readings. The idea of you trust that person's inner mental balance was the way that was described to be a good thing or a working thing, not trying to fix it, but simply to let it be what it is and then explore the implications. That was my sense
Mm.
from
Mm.
the reading I
And
wanted to
and
share.
and one really important thing about this is that we also in the protreptic dialogue we try to hide the other person's secret. We are not interested
Yeah.
in their story, and I like that idea too.
Yeah.
So but I will share four tools, I will say, that you can use when you have these dialogues. Um, the first tool is to take words apart if it's possible. It can be if we have a word like friendship, then a way to explore it is to talk about friend somehow and ship,
Mm,
and
mm,
then
mm,
ask into when we have pulled these two part of the words apart, uh, what comes up when I say ship, perhaps.
yeah.
It's it could be, you know, like sailing in in uh, stormy weather or
Mm,
so, and to be uh, and to be together
mm,
and handle it, etc.
yeah. Yeah.
Something, but it's quite powerful, and actually in Danish the word friendship, it goes like venskab, and it actually means friend, friends create, friends
Mm,
create. So it's about creating a friendship, you know.
mm,
So that's a way to work with it. The other way, the second tool could be to try to look into the root of the word.
mhm,
We know friend and philosophy are somehow have the same root, and also freedom. So
mm,
if we say so when you have this coaching, you can actually share these thoughts and say if we're talking about friends have root in freedom, and it's also had the same root as in philosophy. So it brings some new words into the dialogue. Um, then of course there are different words which means the same somehow. I don't know if we are talking about friend, it can be buddy, it can be
mhm,
perhaps soulmate, different, which also can somehow um, uh, create some new thoughts. And then there's association. When I say friendship, what kind of thoughts do you get about it? You can also use images, metaphors for friendship, perhaps, and that's actually a way, you can say, almost to use storytelling, but it's not stories about yourself. It can be um, it can also be like inspiring from a picture, movie, something. So it's all kind of associations who can
Mhm.
help you move along into this conversation. And the last tool I want to mention is to ask into different cultures and context. It can be uh, is there a difference between friendship, in a I don't know, Danish culture,
Mm.
or we have the whole f- Facebook thing.
Mm.
Actually, Aristoteles, as I remember it, he had like three kinds of friendship that and he had also this idea that actually the most important value to get a, a happy life, a good life, is friendship. So in that sense, there can be all kind of uh, approaches into the conversation, but it's very important that you uh, always are there for the other one.
Mm.
So it's not about, you can say, being smart, clever.
Mhm.
So you are always there. You have this focus that you want to help the other one explore this value. But you also have the approach that you want to learn uh, some new things about this concept too. So you are really curious, or I don't know if that's the right word,
Yeah.
actually to know some new things about this word too. So it's not about you who are,
Yeah.
but as a protreptic coach, you have this awareness of the process, of course, that you are.
Yeah, that really struck me in the readings where it talked about the element of surprise,
Mm,
which acts to bring the guide and the subject into the present mindful moment.
mm,
And
mm,
I think this may the part I failed to record. It was the idea of the protreptic session or journey being well prepared but unplanned,
mm,
in the sense that we're open to the surprise. And one of the things that I notice in each of the four tools is the idea of an event or an action that generates a flash potentially of a new awareness, new insight that is genuine and connected to deep roots. So it's not preconceived, it's not malicious, it's not manipulative, it's not rhetoric, in
exactly.
the unbounded sense,
Yeah.
which can be misused for evil intent. But it was something about the idea of surprise, which is unplanned. I can only try things, and then
Mm,
there may be a moment of surprise that now lets us go. At the same
mm,
time, it suggested in the reading in chapter 11 that it's not unusual. In fact, it is even normal for the session to end up in a temporary cul-de-sac or roundabout in which we're done. That's we've gotten as far as that journey can go for the day,
mm,
and now it's time to rest and reflect and review all of those R words that we say are associated with the true storytelling roundabout. That you get to that temporary destination, that way station, as a way now to start pulling the pieces back together that were explored to come down into the lived experience once more. And that was my sense also of Aristotle's point of view. The practical nature of this approach is that it starts with the life, moves into values and concepts to explore purely, but comes back to the life as a way to be in the world, but maybe elevated, cleaner, centrally connected to our values. And that those tools I see in each case being ways in which that surprise can happen. Oh, I never thought of it that way before. I now have a new appreciation for the depth of those works. If you don't do that, all you ever see is two-dimensional words on a page, and there's nothing behind it. It's when you start mixing and matching, you get this three-dimensional and four-dimensional space to more fully appreciate the concepts, and then you can go back to the that's what struck me with and then I would also say the idea of not trying to be clever or smarter or win. You know, there's a saying in the machine shop, uh, be very careful with clever monkeys. When you're working with power tools, but trying to be too clever or showing off, that's how you lose fingers. So we want to be respectful in that safe space, to be concerned with the conceptual level of ideas, the values, not trying to hurry up and figure out how it's going to get an advantage. We're just there to take it apart, look at it in different ways. And I see each of those four tools as being a way to rotate the concept in our space, or to take apart, or see what's next to it. That all of those things, the mental gymnastics, the David Bogie would call that the theater of the mind, to play with the ideas gently, respectfully. No way to do it. There's no way to do it right or wrong. There's only ways to do it and see what happens. So I think that's I get that. I'm getting that sense of what those why those tools are appropriate and what they do for us. So I'm excited about those ideas. So this is part two of our session on lesson two. I've moved to a new location because of the other monkeys in my shared teaching space, and Jens and I kicked around the idea of redoing that, and I thought, no, let's acknowledge the world as it is. And that little picture in the background you see of mine is it's a wabi-sabi Japanese artwork, wabi-sabi bowl. And that's a reflection of the beauty of imperfection. The subtle beauty of imperfection is what that means in Japanese. And that's the world we live in, that we're talking about important things, the value, the juice that goes into the bowl, but the bowl is also what it is. And so we can reconstruct, and it has a unique value and a flavor. And, we were talking about the fourth tool was what happens with other cultures when you bring that in. Well, there's some wabi-sabi has met the land of Denmark and Copenhagen at the values level. So let's keep it as it is and accept it. It's on the table, and I think we're ready to maybe to talk about duty and identity under your guidance, sir. So back over to you.
Thank you, Ken, and to use your picture, I just want to add on that every value, every concept also have a dark side. For example, if you take a concept like respect, that you want to respect others, you can forget yourself, perhaps. So every value is always imperfect too. It has two sides of it. So that's important. But let us get into these two concepts, and I would like to start with the concept of duty, and my first question is, why is duty important for your life and your work?
For me, it's the test of my performance of living my responsibility in the world. I am committed to service to others, and I'm trying to do it non-greedy, altruistic, helpful, professional, effective, caretaker. Those things inspire my sense of duty. And so the performance of that duty has results. Those results have consequences for others that I love, respect, that I serve. And so the impact of my choices, of my actions on their life is the scorecard for me that comes back to say, how well am I doing my duty? It's not enough to try hard. I must also do good. A really important teacher of mine had a phrase, if you try hard and do good, that's good. If you try hard and do bad, that's bad. That the results do matter. The consequences do matter. Not everything is just simply something to learn from and get better. Those actions, those events in the world leave marks, and they shape everything that's going to come after as a result of that. So to come back to duty, then, the performance of that duty is a choice of who to serve and what to try to achieve and how to do it. And so to do that well is important. And to do that with achieving results matters because of its impact on others. I define my success and satisfaction in the world based on how well I serve others. I could care less that much about me so much as it's what am I doing to and for and about others? What do I stand for? Those are the ideas that when I unpack duty, I've never said it that way before, but that's the trying to encapsulate why it matters to me. Lots of hooks on that. Over.
Mm. So you have different serving others. So in that sense, we could explore that, but you also mentioned the concept of good several times.
Yeah.
So how do we know, or when we are doing something good, what is good?
Yeah.
What does it mean?
For me, that's it starts with how it feels in my hands and my heart and my intention. And my belief is that if it starts with good intentions, that it has a chance to actually be good. So I want to start with good intentions and vision. And I know that I have judgments about what I thought that went well, or this was good, but I the older and more experience that I get, actually, the less confidence I have in the completeness and accuracy of my judgment. And the more that I look to others that I am serving as the judge of that. So I try to be a good husband, but I really ask my wife, am I being a good husband for you? I need to know. And am I being a good father to you, my children? I'm trying, but I'm a monkey and I'm doing my best. And I think I'm getting better based on trying to listen to your feedback. But I see that as the ultimate judgment of that is the world and the people I serve is the definer of good. Although I think I go in with a sense of what I think is good and what I will stand for and what I will not stand for. So I'm holding those in almost a tension, but a healthy tension, in the same way that a beam in the framework of a building, a steel beam, to be effective, must be under tension to carry the load. And it's anchored, but it has its own internal qualities, but it also must be seen as part of the structure it supports. So to me, that internal and external dynamic at the point of judgment are both required for the determination of good, in my view. I cannot completely just say, well, whatever you say is good is good.
No.
I seem to have a vote, but I don't want to just say what I think is good as if I exist in my own vacuum. So on this, yeah, go over.
Yeah, and actually, Ken, I think this is very interesting. That you define that to act from something good, you really need to explore the concept with different people. It can be family, or it can be people you work with. So it's not a define. And why I'm saying this is interesting is that the German philosopher Hannah Arendt, who wrote about the rising of the Nazi movement in the 30s, she actually say that we need to explore concepts instead of just saying good or judge. We really need to talk about it, because if we don't explore these concepts, then we will end up, acting from evil forces somehow. So I like the idea that you actually reflect on that. To do your duty is to reflect on also with other people what is good. I find that inspiring and very, very important in these days.
Well, there's always a challenge on that. The question is, when I walk into my military classroom, for example, or my traders' rooms, they recognize me as an expert in those areas, and I am. And yet, the more expertise I have, the more I ask them, how does this feel? How is it going? Because I am also concerned that just my point of view should not dominate everything, that there has to be room for new light and new air. Otherwise, we fall into the expertise trap. I'm very mindful of that. So watch my soccer players. Maybe they invent a new move, a new way to be, a different way. Or my traders discover they want to just know how I do it. I want to know what works for them. So there's always a question that's at the end of the session or the end of the training or whatever, was that right? Or what else was there? And the better it goes, the more I question. It leads to permanent dissatisfaction or incompleteness.
No, but then let us explore what is the dark side of duty.
It's the consequences of choices. There's kind of there's two dark rooms. There's the dark room that says, if you got it wrong and you did your best to achieve what you thought, then you really created harmful by trying to do your best and you got it wrong. That's one shadow. And then there's another shadow that can be even more troublesome. And that is, if you got it approximately right, You made the trade-off decision as best you could and it worked. There are still negative consequences that are part of winning the peace. Blood is spilt and lives are lost and property was destroyed. While we hope we achieved a greater good and made progress, there are scars that are there forever, that it's never entirely good. It's the dark spot in the white fish of yin yang, in the Chinese culture. It's that consequence, that's where the darkness is. And it's easy to say, well, that's just the cost of doing business. And you want to make an omelet, you got to break eggs. But those human consequences and the lives lost, I don't care if you say, well, that was evil and the world is better for the lives were lost and will never be the same. There's that goes hand in hand with the job. It goes hand in hand with if you make money trading, somebody lost money. That has an impact. And that's a consequence. That's an unescapable consequence of that action, which gets now into, at some point, the ethics of decision making and choosing to engage in this area rather than that area, and then making choices about how to be. That's, the shadow side is why people get PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome and disorder, is coming to grips with that reality. It's hard to talk about, and it's always in the room. It's always on your mind. It's you always remember their faces. You never forget those things. So that is the two shadows. If you got it wrong, yeah, that's easy to see. And then if you got it right, there's also a shadow that is always there. That's part of the package. And that's the soldier's ethic, the trader's ethic, the teacher's ethic. So
in that, So in that sense, it seems like, and of course a part of the concept is that you need to pull somehow yourself above your own, I don't know, feelings.
Yeah.
In a way, but you, I don't know, also need to reflect on what is behind the duty and what is the result of it, right?
Yeah, there is a deeper sense of right and wrong, good and bad, evil and nature. There's good and evil in the world, but there's also nature, which rises above good and evil in some ways, some deeper essence. And so duty is in some ways is a choice, in some ways is discovered the same way. That's why it led to identity. But there is some sense of a natural order of things on which duty is layered. There is a larger nature on which duty is floating and working towards something, in support of something, but there's an underlying sense of order and disorder, dynamic, that provides energy and direction and a sense of deeper awareness, unjudging but judging. I maybe to me that's the indescribable Tao, but which can be felt and seen. The Tao of the Chinese. There's something essential in there that must remain unresolved. The Chinese start with the Tao that can be, the way that can be named is not the way. So there's always that unfinished, unspoken next thing and beyond, that even when you try to capture it into a concise, complete, contained value of duty, there's more. Then there's all the other stuff, all that is, which is not duty, but which is connected to duty, is the larger indescribable mystery. And that's part of the that actually helps me remember to ask the questions of what else was there, what could there have been, what about the light and the shadow, and what is it that contains both light and shadow? If it's not just light and it's not just shadow, well, what else is it if it's not those things? The indescribable, the eternal mystery, something like that. There's what is that, and how is that connected to me? So
yeah, and I'm how I get inspired is that from your words is that I see different kind of duty, and if I should ask, if you put it into different context and culture, is there a different, from a Western culture, how we see duty, from a perhaps
absolutely.
Asian, Japanese?
Even if you restrict it to a narrow dimension of human experience, the traditional warrior culture all share a certain martial spirit that is common, but also has an uncommon, unique perspective. The spirit of the samurai of Japan has many areas that have connection to the modern Western warriors tradition, but also has logical extensions that go far beyond what we would accept as a value. Like the total commitment to the daimyo, to the Lord you have chosen and sworn fealty to, no matter what, without changing. That's not a value that I accept. I swore an oath to the Constitution to support and defend its values and principles against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to follow the orders of officers appointed over me who give me lawful orders. But there is never unquestioned obedience to humans. It is an obedience to uphold the values as I understand them, as I apply them, as I live them, as espoused in the Constitution. That sacred oath to a set of espoused values is where the samurai spirit and I agree on what we invest our duty towards and what we are making a sacrifice for. Whereas in their culture, it is to the daimyo, to the Lord, which is more important than the self and your family and the world around. But the Constitution is a different object of service to, or obedience to, or interpretation of. So you could pick any warrior culture, and as you begin to appreciate them, you find those areas of overlap but disagreement. In the same way, the concepts and synonyms, they rhyme, but they're not identical. So all of those different cultures we see on display here when officers from 120 nations come together and we talk about service and duty and obligations to our respective societies, and we try to share with them our sensibility of what we swear allegiance to. And that actually, swearing allegiance to values is actually quite rare in the modern world of warriorship. So so the impact of the cultural lenses does actually cause a significant difference in the world of lived values. Over.
How do you balance, your duty to the army, to an organization, to the duty for yourself?
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
be.
yeah. It's like an onion skin in many ways with layers,
Mm,
and that there are core personal values and my duty to self
mm,
and my judgment about how I'm doing. I am ultimately the judge of me, informed by others, as I described before, that tension. And there are organizational values. This school it's a military school. It has values, and it lives in a certain way and has policies. And my army has that, and my nation has that in law, and then the Constitution has it. So each one we hope there's alignment, but inevitably there's differences that we're trying to shape and understand. And
mm,
I absolutely know the boundary that if my institution or my army were to say certain things or to require certain things that would violate my sense of proper duty or would violate what I think is my duty to the Constitution, I am absolutely clear about what I will do. I mean, I've rehearsed that decision. I know exactly what I will tolerate and what I will not tolerate within my understanding of what my duty means. If the organization moves away from me and I cannot accommodate that, then we're done. I won't go
mm,
with them and sacrifice those inner core values. It so happens that they are aligned and within the same sphere. And so I can support this organization and its mission with all its imperfections, with hopes for a better world. But if it should stray too far from the path and I can't tolerate it, then I'm out.
mm,
So that's the sense of those competing values in the world, the way they manifest in action, the connection between values, choices, behavior, and results. Those are part of the continuing calculus of decision making. And that has really emerged for me out of our discussion. The thing that the conscious, intentional choices. And when I talked before about my big five, the husband, father, student, teacher, and warrior, that fifth one, the idea of the warrior living an intentional life, a life of intention, captures for me that inner quality of proper service of duty, but also the external service to others is captured in the word intention
mm,
and deliberation, to live a deliberate life according to intentions anchored in values and accepting the consequences of action. So those are connected to the act of deciding in every moment. But and that so the decisions change, but the unchanging piece is the connection to intention and motivation and dedication and those deep values. So that's where I am in my roundabout now.
yeah. I don't, and in that sense, as you also said in the beginning, Ken, there's a connection between identity and duty,
Yeah,
because that's maybe a struggle somehow,
yeah,
but sometimes it can be in balance. And um, and I don't know if what does it take to deal with duty in a I don't know, in a more well-being balanced way. What does it take? What kind of skills, human skills, does it take to be in the eye of
yeah,
the hurricane
yeah,
without getting stressed and
yeah, yeah.
you know?
That's part of the to go back to the word shadow and the consequences and every warrior tradition recognizes scars. In the Samoan tradition, Asian Pacific Islanders, it's the tattoos that represent courage under stress, and it's a marking, or it's the tattoo that says, hey, that's my, or the Native American scarring, the courage scars. Those choices and events leave marks that last and are a living reminder of the connection to everything that has happened before and that is carried forward. So that as you're making decisions in the moment, if you're looking in the mirror and you see the person making those decisions and you see those scars, those are reminders of that lived context, which is part of what comes into the story. It comes into the event, if I can use that word. And there's reconciliation and reflection and reorganize. All of those are words in our roundabout, those places of repackaging or reloading, reorganizing, relating, reflecting, recharging, resting. All of those are words that are part of that, that happen in that safe, trusted, truthful space of the roundabout that we learn from David with true storytelling. For me, when those are settled and together and I feel prepared and I'm ready, I know every point of departure from that roundabout is the next cycle, the next leg of the adventure, towards the next waypoint, the next roundabout. So that to me is that expansion and contraction, the action and then the reaction and reflection, to break those words apart, if we would, and that balance and harmony, the resettling of, as you know, as a mountain climber, a well-packed backpack, it doesn't make it easier to climb the mountain, but it makes it possible. But if you pack that thing poorly, boy, that's that could be miserable. So there are those things that you learn about resettling and repairing. All of those R words come to mind. Over.
Just to say a few words before we end what I get as a deeper feeling, and I know this is so real for people who are soldiers, but in a way to have a duty. It can be as a soldier, it can also be as a father. There's always something that you need to sacrifice somehow.
Yeah.
And I believe that it is how you can deal with that, or how you can handle what you sacrifice.
To get back to your idea of the examining the roots, I used to think sacrifice was something that was a cost that I had lost for a choice. I've now come to realize that the root word is sacred. And it's an offering. And it actually is what allows me to experience the joys and rewards and the reality of the duty. So I don't see the things that I give up as by being a father, and there are things you give up when you take on that duty. I don't see that as a cost at all, but I see it as an investment in some ways, or that's what allows me to be able to experience my children the way no one else in the world has the privilege of doing. That's not a cost.
No.
That's the opportunity that no one else gets to have. That's so sacredness of that How many times nobody wants to be a parent because the cost of and what you have to give up to be a parent. I'm thinking, is that what being a parent means to you? How sad. I feel I'm not mad at them. I just feel so sad that they have not gotten to experience that the sacred payoff. What's in it for me? That wasn't why I did it.
No.
It happened and it was a choice, but the unexpected rewards make the sacrifice, the payoff is infinite to one when it works, I think. And that's been my experience. And so all of the sacrifices of being a husband, father, teacher, student, warrior, trivial compared to the indescribable payoffs. It's like, yeah, so not a cost. And so people talk about the sacrifices of duty and the things you have to give up. I said, man, you don't even know. If you think that was a cost, then you just don't understand, that aspect of living. And I hope I hope everybody gets to experience their choices in that way, that what they think is a cost is really opening a door to the opportunity. It's a key to an amazing future and life. So I don't know.
What I got, Ken, I got this when you were sharing these thoughts. I got this feeling or attunement of somehow freedom and meaningfulness. That's perhaps life is to have a duty and then
For
to
me,
go back. Yeah, and although it has some sacrifice, which you need to turn to something positive. And that's, I think that's
yeah. I mean, did the world sacrifice the rain so that the crops may grow? We didn't lose the water. The water is in the crops. You neither gain nor lose any of that. It simply takes a new form. So I don't see, the sacrifice of my labor is in the crops, which rewards me 100 times with new energy in the water. So all of that, it's the conservation of things, and the transformation of things, not the loss or the gain of things. That to me is sort of that's the eternal flow of bodies and energies in motion. The stone. Did the mountain sacrifice itself to create a stone? No, it simply was transformed into an infinite number of stones and grains of sand on the beach. The mountain is still there. You just have to know where to look. You have to learn to see the grains of sand on the beach as the mountain it used to be, and that it will be again someday. What was lost? Nothing. What was gained? Everything. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ken. And it was a complex conversation. We got around but in that sense, I like it because as a protreptic guide, I needed to be aware and actually to follow your thoughts. And of course, there was a lot of concepts I could have asked into, but somehow instead of perhaps using these tools that we talked about before, I think that I was more inspired from your words and try to follow them. and that's also a part of a protreptic conversation.
Well, yeah, we were both surprised. I mean, we were prepared, but we didn't plan that. And so the highest principle of surprise and working with what's on the table, we walked into this thinking we were just going to easily demonstrate a couple tools and then move on to the next lesson. And the world was not going to have that. So that was actually an example of the lived experience of genuine protreptic. So what really emerged for me to reflect on, as like a story seed for the next round that we're going to prepare for, but then do something else, it has to do with the ethics of action. If anything I said made any sense, then if nothing is ever lost or gained, then you really are free to make ethical choices on how to act consistent with your values, because you actually don't have to worry about what is lost or what is gained. You can actually genuinely act from values, confident that the world will contain everything and you can't screw it up. It's simply transforming and it'll find its own proper natural state. So for me, I'm going to be thinking hard about ethics and decision-making choices, something like that. I guess single will see with ethics, but then the idea of in an organizational setting, like we can make choices in our life, and at the end of the day, how much are we moving the world? When you start adding the scale and leverage of organizations that endure and the consequences of scale, now suddenly those choices take on a new level of importance. And now the concept of ethics that harmonize around values beyond your individual, but to the organization. Those are the things I want to think about maybe for the next session, with your permission.
Sure, and before we end this conversation, I just want to say, Ken, that this dialogue, it actually touched me. I can feel that, and a part of the protreptic dialogue is to prepare yourself for the event out there, and I actually think that it's very important to have these discussions, dialogue around concept like duty, and because I think there's a lot of people out there, who are not reflecting on that concept, and I think it's so meaningful because it's a kind of a sense making to have a duty. It is just very important to reflect on.
I have I discovered a duty. I have to have this conversation with my kids and my wife, because I'm not sure I have told them as clearly as I now can how I feel. Because so much of our daily conversations are what's the cost of rent, and the cost of school, and the cost of food, and the cost of living, and getting a job, that we get caught up in those things. That there's some other things that are so much more important than that trivia that I have neglected, I think. So
but
I am awakened to that new sense of duty.
Thank you, and for the
Take good care, my friend.
Conversation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna stop the recording now, and then we can get back to the important stuff and talking Manchester United football. So let me hit where's my little button for recording here? Yeah.